going to be talking about TMDLs, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the acronym TMDL, it stands for Total Maximum Daily Loads. It's the amount of pollutants that can be assimilated by a stream in a 24-hour period. And DEQ, through their monitoring efforts, identify and set those TMDL loads. It was very important in that this particular act started to look at non-point source pollution. Prior to that, the focus was on point sources. And obviously they had a very ambitious goal, and I think we missed the mark on that somewhat. But in other ways it was very good because a lot of things did happen, or a lot of improvements across the United States in terms of the point sources that were addressed and the pollutants that were cleaned up. Clean Water Act, Section 208, very important to Idaho. It introduced the concept of area-wide planning, or watershed planning, and kind of a holistic approach to addressing water quality, especially for non-point source pollution, which is pollution that comes from everywhere. You just can't narrow it right down to a pipe or an outlet. So it's spread across the area through watersheds. Also introduced pilot projects. They made pilot projects available. There were funding from EPA. And in Idaho, there were several of those that were funded. I was fortunate enough to have one when I was a district conservationist in ARCO on the Big Lost River. The focal point of those projects and the purpose for them was to evaluate the process of a total watershed planning effort, and also to introduce and try out new evaluation techniques and planning processes and those kind of things. And it also laid the work for what we had in Idaho was the State Agricultural Water Quality Program, and these projects were kind of the template that were used to develop that process and that program. The development of the Idaho Agricultural Pollution Abatement Plan, which was also funded through Section 208. The Agricultural Pollution Abatement Plan, there should be one of these in every district office throughout the state. If you have one, I'd suggest that if you're new to a soil conservation district board or a new employee of the commission or any of the other agencies dealing with water quality, it would be a good idea to sit down and peruse this document. This document lays out a voluntary approach for addressing water quality, and especially in the non-point source arena. It identifies all the BMPs, the water quality BMPs in Idaho that we use in Idaho. Also discusses roles and responsibilities of all the state and federal agencies, and just lays out a process and a plan for going after this on a statewide basis. It's been revised several times, and it's due again for revision at this point, and a very valuable document in guiding the efforts that we have here in the state of Idaho. The Clean Water Act is Section 303D. This particular section requires the states to identify water quality impaired streams. In the process early on in the state of Idaho, they had what they called basin area meetings, or BAMs. And these meetings were set up so that we could get public input. They had 6 of them around the state in the major basins in Idaho. And almost all the agencies, Forest Service, BLM, the Commission, NRCS, EPA, DEQ, were at these meetings, and a lot of the public did turn out at these meetings all throughout the state, and gave them an opportunity to put streams that they thought were impaired, or streams that they had concerns about, and even favorite fishing streams were on that list. When those lists were put together, they were sent down here to Boise, and there was a committee called a WCWAC committee, and I don't have a clue what that means, but anyway, it was if you know Kent Foster, he knows what it is. He was on that committee. So. But the process was to go through and sort through all of those streams that were identified, and that would be what a list that would be comprised by the DEQ folks, and they would submit that to EPA as the list to work on in the state. Also identified in this section was the need for a continuing planning process. The Ag Pollution Abatement Plan, which I mentioned earlier, is a component of the state water quality management plan, and so that's kind of the umbrella process that this fits under. And this is really, I think, kind of the launching point for the Commission in addressing our TMDL workload and the things that were identified. In that process that I described earlier with those streams, DEQ, they submitted 36 streams to EPA. EPA approved those 36 streams, and in doing so, the Idaho Conservation League and the Idaho Sportsmen's Coalition, primarily the Idaho Sportsmen's Coalition, sued EPA and for accepting Idaho's list. So the lawsuit came back. It was Judge Dwyer, who was the spotted owl judge in Seattle, was the one who was presiding over that litigation. Came back and said not only the 962 stream segments, also we wanted a reasonable time frame for getting that work done. And so the state of Idaho, or DEQ, said, well, we'd like to take 25 years. The 36 streams we presented were 36 streams that we thought we had the resources and the money to address. The return from the judge was, well, 8 years is reasonable and do them all. And so that precipitated this document here. This is the Guidance for Development of Total Maximum Daily Loads in Idaho. It was developed in 1999, and it covered the 8-year period in the document, year by year and by watershed, and this was our target. This was the original target of watersheds that we were going to go after, and we started just right at the top in 1997 list and started working through all of those. Then the response from Idaho to this lawsuit was this law, 393601, and then the other appropriate sections that go along with that. Key thing for the Commission was that first item there. You know, what is a designated agency, for grazing and agriculture? What does that mean? What do we do? Is the Commission going to be regulatory? How's this going to work out? And at the time, Don Hakela was the Commission chairman. And along with the Idaho Association of Conservation Districts and their leadership, they approached the governor's office on a number of occasions trying to get clarification. And it was quite a while before we got any notification or any help in that regard. When it happened, representatives from the governor's office came over to the Commission and said, well, we'd like to gather all the ag family of agencies together. And so that was the Commission, the Association, and Department of Agriculture, and we had Department of Lands because of some of the grazing issues, and I can't think of some of the other agencies, but anyway, it was quite a gathering. And in that meeting, we were told, that as a designated agency, we'll take the leadership Commission and the TMDL process and move forward with the soil conservation districts and come up with a plan and go to work on this. So those were kind of our initial marching orders. And also it created BAGs and WAGs, or Basin Advisory Groups, Watershed Advisory Groups. And the Basin Advisory Groups take care, there's 6 basins in Idaho, and they formed, DEQ helped form those Basin Advisory Groups. They look at, they have input into the DEQ on beneficial uses, what's a beneficial use, and also the streams that possibly can be delisted or added, also monitoring issues, and look at that larger scale of efforts that go on, and then also give guidance back to DEQ. Watershed advisory groups are more focused down on a single watershed. They have, kind of input and into what goes on within the watersheds. This kind of caused a little consternation within the commission and others. We said, well, the WAG, gee whiz, isn't that what soil conservation districts do? Shouldn't we be the lead in that? The word that came back was, well, yeah, but we want to have an expanded membership. We want to go beyond the typical agricultural makeup of a soil conservation district. And so they wanted to include municipalities and other interests in that. And the WAG process has been very successful in some locations and not so successful in others. The ones that have been the most successful were the ones that had soil conservation districts either in the lead or actually comprising the WAG. And that's kind of carried forward to today. The partnership, I'd like to just talk a little bit about. This is so important. This is so crucial. And when this works, it's a thing of beauty. It really is. And I guess I would put one more block up here if I could do this over again. I'd put DEQ coming in there. I mentioned the State Ag Water Quality Program. It was our implementation vehicle of choice, or it really worked. And it was co-administered by DEQ and the Soil Conservation Commission. The funding came out of the Idaho Water Pollution Control Account. We had a planning component where we could work with the district. They could apply and make an application for a planning grant up to $60,000, and they had 2 years to complete a plan. I'm just kind of giving you an illustration here of how it would work together as a partnership. NRCS, they'd have the small watershed program, the PO 566 program. And we were very successful working with NRCS, the Commission, DEQ, in marrying the State Ag Water Quality Program with that small watershed program. So as a result, there was over $21 million brought into the state of Idaho for water quality efforts. And the association, when we started really looking at the workload involved with the TMDL process and saw how huge it was, we felt obviously we needed more staff. And the association took the lead in working with the commission in putting together a game plan. We figured out a rough cost estimate based on our experience with the State Ag Water Quality Program on what it would cost to do this work. The amount was over $1 billion that we came up with. So let me tell you, that did get the attention of the governor and the governor's office. And as a result, also the legislature. The legislature approved some funding for the commission for additional staff, but they said you can't have additional staff. You can't have FTEs or full-time equivalent staff, but we will give you the money. And so we basically, through the association, were able to put on six employees, and the association was basically the middle man, I guess, in this, and that they helped in the hiring process of those people. We had 3 water quality resource conservationists and 3 monitoring staff spread throughout the Idaho because of that effort. So the partnership, it's been up and down. There's been some rough bumps in the road, but when this works, it is the best thing that Idaho has going for it, in far as conservation, natural resource protection and enhancement, and obviously water quality issues. And I think we need to do everything we can to strengthen and rebuild that partnership where it's needed. It will pay a lot of benefits and dividends in the future. Current status. Right now we're looking at 7 remaining implementation plans. After this last couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks, we've been meeting with DEQ regional offices around the state and sitting down with them and saying, okay, here's our list, here's where we feel we need to go, here's some ideas on what we think should come off of the list, and what kind of input do you have for us. As a result, these 7 are going to be reduced probably to 1 or 2. And by the end of the summer, we'll have some of the remaining ones completed. We have some that are 98% completed, just ready to write up or finish the write-up. So just finishing up field work on a couple others. But I think the progress is again, that's the basic list that we started with. Where we're at right now is trying to find out more about the addendum process, and that's been our questions that we've carried to our regional meetings with DEQ. What is the addendum, and what does it look like, and what does it mean to us? How can we help? How can we be engaged in this process? And they have shared with us what that is, and where they're making adjustments, and they will furnish addendum plans or TMDL plans of where their strategies on where they want to go. For us, our first step in this is to do an assessment on each of those addendum areas. The Lemhi is a good example. In that one, we have a completed implementation plan on that watershed. After the addendum, TMDL addendum came out from DEQ, they've identified 14 assessment units within that watershed. So now our job is to look at those assessment units and see how does that overlay with our existing plan, and also look at any progress that's been made as far as implementation from the district and the local staff there, and then seeing how much work we have to do. Some of the regional offices that we visited, our workload is going to be very light. Some it's going to be, I think after we do the assessment, there will be some work on follow-up, and this is going to go on. This process now is they're looking at streams that weren't included in the original series of that were identified, and they're going to be looking at new ones and going in and ones that maybe we didn't cover the basis, like if we left off temperature or bacteria or something there that was missed on the first go around. So I think it'll be a workload that can be handled on a year-to-year basis. The 5-year reviews, we have 18 that we originally identified at the first of the year. After visiting with the DEQ folks, we're finding out that they have a policy now of where they're going to look at one 5-year review per year per region. And so that's going to reduce that kind of a workload down significantly. Our involvement in that primarily in the past, and I think also in the future, is going to be BMPs. What BMPs were applied in those watersheds, and do they work? And so I think we'll have some adjustment on those numbers here. This map's just an idea, gives you an idea of all the green is where we have implementation plans throughout the state for TMDLs. You can see we've almost got the state blanketed. We have the hash marks is basically where we have addendums, and you can see we've got a lot of projects in those areas that are done, and so it's going to be, like I say, matching up. Today's TMDL challenges: is it still important? And direction. In one of our meetings, somebody brought up the fact, well, there's no programs, budgets are tight, got the sequestration at the national level, what's that going to do? How are we going to do this? Is it worth it? These kind of things, questions were coming up. And direction. Is this going to be a focus for the state of Idaho? And that's not only agency direction, but I think legislative direction, governor's office direction. If it's important, help us develop the plan and go after this. And obviously staffing is another issue. I think right now with the addendums, as we get into that more, we'll have a better idea of what kind of staffing impacts that's going to have on the agencies, and especially the commission, where we are trying to support the districts as much as possible and in their efforts, and then funding for BMP implementation. That's the real critical issue I think that's out there right now. And I think one that needs to be worked on by a lot of entities and individuals. And then the last one is validation of current and past efforts. Benefits of an implementation plan is obviously the first two bullets, the protection and enhancement of natural resources, our water quality, and then demonstrating the value of the voluntary approach. And in my mind, that's number one. And that's where we go back to the Ag Pollution Abatement Plan. That voluntary approach is so keen and so vital. I think through a regulatory process, yeah, you get things done, but a voluntary process, people are doing it because they see the value. And our job is to help, identify that value and help them, with solutions. Potential funding opportunities, even though things are kind of dark right now, I do believe that there will be future opportunities that will come along. If this work is important, if it's not a luxury, water quality is not a luxury, but it is vital, there will be funding in the future. Then validation of current and past efforts again. BMP effectiveness. I really feel that this is going to be the future of water quality work. We've been at it for 10, 20 years, and a lot of money has been spent in the state of Idaho on these practices, and we've got a lot of good things done out there. But it does need to be valid. There are people that are saying, does it work? Was it worth it? And we really need to show that. The basis of the BMP effectiveness evaluation is this right over here. This is called a feedback loop. This shows up in the Water Quality Standards of Idaho. It's addressed in the Idaho Ag Pollution Abatement Plan. The process is very simple. We call this the whiz wheel, and we thought, well, if it ever works, gee whiz, great. Basically, the first step is to identify beneficial uses and the impacts on those water quality bodies. What is the problem? Then develop the BMPs to address the issues, and then implement the BMPs through the plans and the implementation projects, and then to evaluate and monitor. And then to use that data to come back up here and reevaluate, solve problems, it worked, or we need to readjust the BMPs, or we need to readjust programs and efforts. So very, very critical. Within the commission, we've developed a field guide, BMP effectiveness field guide for staff. We've spent probably the last 7, 8 years trying to fine-tune the processes and the protocols involved with that. I think it's ready to roll and really get some focus and get a lot of this kind of work done. BMP effectiveness database. There are efforts to track the implementation. EPA has a database, Water Resources has a database, and they all track different things. And for us, we have one that's, it's up, it's running, it's working. May need some fine-tuning in the future, but we need to populate it now and be able to tell the story and report our progress. And I've mentioned DEQ 5 reviews. I think, to me, this is the tip of the iceberg. The concept of 5-year reviews. What's happening? Does it work? This is the beginning. And I think that's going to increase. It's going to roll like a snowball and become bigger as time goes on. So with that, I think I'll wrap it up. If there's any questions.